Good morning, everybody. So I know it's been a couple of days, a couple of mornings since I've done another episode here on the Tia Talk podcast, but I just realized something. I've been doing this all wrong. Here I am busting my butt to do these every single morning, and everybody else is putting up one episode a week. What am I doing this for? This is crazy. So, that being said, I am going to dial it back. It's hard doing these every morning, but I have a little extra something I'm going to start doing. The other day, I got curious. I said, let me go here on Spotify. Or actually, I just Googled it. I Googled it and I went on Spotify specifically. And I said, let me look up some dog-themed podcasts. So, of course, as expected, most of them were about dog training. So I listened to a few, and I've never been a person that can get through an entire podcast. Like, I don't have patience. I get anxious and then I turn it off and walk away. But it doesn't mean the podcast is not good. But here is what I did notice on all the dog training themed podcasts I listened to. Now, it's going to sound like I'm not being nice, but I mean it. I actually mean it in a complimentary kind of way. They all were very educational. They were very educated, informative, had a lot of good information. The problem that I saw with all the ones I listened to, and I'm not going to name names right now, is that the trainers that were doing the podcast, they were almost too smart, too clinical, too, I don't know what the right word. Like, in other words, if I was the average dog owner, I don't know that I could understand what they were trying to say because they were using these big fancy words. And I mean, I was impressed, and I always, let's talk about my daughter-in-law, for example, Lizzie. She's gone to school. She's got all these accreditations. She knows a lot now. And when she talks, of course, she uses the lingo of which she has learned. And I'm like, huh? Huh? So, I come from the old school, back in the Stone Age days where we didn't have that kind of stuff available. We just said it, we just put it out there. It was very cut and dry, very simple. So I had an idea. I think what I'm going to do is cut my podcast down to 2 episodes a week. One's going to be under my Tia Talk, theme, just which is anything goes. And the other one about dog training, but from the perspective of me, which is, I don't have a lot of fancy words to give you, so I'm going to just keep it simple. But also, a little something I picked up off of TikTok, actually. They have this thing called storytelling. And what it is when they're trying to get a point across, when a person is trying to get a point across, they tell a story, a personal story, that correlates to the message they're trying to get across. And it helps you put it all together. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to try it. And, when I did my dog training classes in Los Angeles, because I always did kind of walk to the beat of my own drum, I just didn't do traditional dog training classes. They were always a little bit, I'll say creative, but I think I mean odd. I didn't just teach you how to make your dog sit. There was a whole story that went behind it. And some of you may know this story, and some of you may not, so I'm going to tell it anyways. I did not go to a traditional school for dog training. I was actually thrown into the world of training, and I mean thrown in, when I was given the chance to go to Sri Lanka, which is an island off the coast of India, for those that don't know, and work on the movie The Jungle Book. So I had to work with all kinds of animals. And I mean, I needed to learn them quick. So not only was I there working with my wolves and my wolf dogs, I had to learn bears, tigers, lions, chimpanzees, orangutan, the monkeys, everything, birds, king cobras. And so you had to learn the ins and outs of these animals in order to have the relationship that it took to get them to do what you wanted them to do. The other great thing, and I'm very fortunate, I know there's a lot of controversy behind using these type of animals for like entertainment, movies, commercials. I get it. I do. I was very fortunate in that the company I worked for was so good to their animals. So good to their animals. And it was super, upbeat, uplifting, or in today's terms, positive reinforcement. Okay. So very reward based. So I learned from the best. I not only had the best trainers, but I had the most amazing animals to teach me everything I needed to know. And all this crammed into a year. Yeah. Now I already had a lot of animal background. I grew up riding horses, showing horses. I rodeoed. So I had a livestock background actually. And then I went into exotic animals. And it wasn't until years later I finally got into dogs. And I'm like, oh, they're so tiny compared to a 1,200-pound horse or a 600-pound Bengal tiger. So I decided I'm going to give it a whirl. I'm going to try. I'm going to try working with y'all and talking to you about training your dogs, but from a different perspective. And I think since it was the exotic animals, which is what they're called, that taught me everything, I'm going to kind of go with that theme. I'm going to surprise you. You'll see it on the next episode. All right. Well, I hope you like this idea. Yeah, it might be kind of fun, right? Okay, guys. Well, that being said, my mission is to rescue. But my hope is that one day I won't